surgeons keep our hearts beating. They do the amazing, help save lives, and so can you. Your CSL plasma donation can help create 24 critical life-saving medicines that can give Grandpa the chance for his heart to swell when he meets his new grandson, or give a bride the chance for her heart to skip a beat on her wedding day. Every plasma donation helps more than you know. Do the amazing. Help save lives. Donate today at your local CSL Plasma Center and be rewarded for your generosity.
I'm Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and today's episode is specifically a bonus one for the week because it's just honestly something that came up in recent conversation, and I realized that it's thoughts that I probably wish I heard when I was a bit younger, and maybe it's just from my own life experience and observations that I'm able to kind of conclude or share these type of thoughts. And I want to preface that I try to steer away from giving advice, and most of what I say on this podcast is not usually what I would consider advice, but just my thoughts and, again, my life experience or observations, so take it as you will. But what's interesting about that is recently my therapist had mentioned to me that he does not share advice, or give advice rather, because people often give advice to soothe their own anxiety. And it got my wheels turning. I thought about that for like the whole week after he said that. And I think there's a lot of truth to that if you think long and hard about why certain people have given you advice or like are very forward about giving advice. I could say that from a perspective of someone in my family who has often tried to give me advice that not only doesn't resonate with me, but some of the advice doesn't really have a lot of, I would say, like reality to it that like just at the very least, at the bare minimum, makes sense. And now I can see why this person would be so adamant about trying to share advice or trying to share something from, once again, their experience to try to like push on to me, because it's like soothing their own past and soothing their own anxiety about it. And the biggest, I guess, about that one is hard when two people, so in this case, a family member trying to share advice to me when we don't have the same experiences at all, right? So if I do ever seek out advice, or maybe just at least wanting to hear thoughts and experiences, I would ideally go to people that have had a very parallel experience to what I'm currently going through. So if it's like business related, I would go to fellow entrepreneurs, you know, especially around my age or a little bit older, who have been through maybe certain stages of the entrepreneurship and business building phase. If it's about a relationship, I would personally probably go to someone that, or like observe and hear from someone that's maybe about 10, 15 years older than me. So they're still attuned in a way to kind of what my generation deals with, but also has been in a relationship or has had enough relationship experience to kind of have a common ground or common theme, I guess, to look at. So I always like that because in a sense, it's like in between your mom age and like an older sister age, you know. I think it's usually more rare to have an older sister that's like 10 to 15 years older than you. But for some reason, I have found that to be the sweet spot for me when it comes to hearing from other women who can share just some wisdom. And again, I take what I feel like is best for me. So with that being said, I wanted to share a question that came up in conversation. And this was a while ago, so this really doesn't have, much like present context by the time I'm releasing this episode. But she had asked, me and a group of girls whether we think that, like, what we think rather, if she should like end things with her current partner because of just certain situations that he is in, or should she try to make it work, that kind of thing. And I guess to paint a little bit of context, she actually lives with her partner, and I believe they've been together for maybe like close to 3 years now, if not a little over 3 years. But the main thing is that I think he's unfortunately got himself into some difficult personal adversity, and it, I think, affected her belief or judgment about whether he is the ideal partner for her. And she mentioned that she's had a mix of opinions. Some people think he's amazing, that she should try to make it work with him. Some others said to her that she deserves better, she could do better, she should try to figure out the living situation and find a seamless way out of that, and ideally move on from him. So I'm not like a closest person to her, so she kind of was curious to know what I thought, which I feel like is kind of smart because I'm not going to really have a huge bias on this. And to add as a tangent, I recommend, if you're ever going to try to seek out advice or like an external opinion, find someone or a group of people that have as little attachment to the outcome or to like you as a person, because people who love you, whether it's like friends, family, who are really close to you, they're going to have a pretty strong opinion about it. And that's where it can get pretty blurry, because friends and family will always look out, like will always want the best for you. But we all know when you are sharing some sort of situation going on in your life, and this doesn't have to be relationships, right? This is just in general. Whatever the case may be, they always are only going to know the way you shared it, right? But you also realize there's kind of two sides to the story, or two ways to look at it. So you have to be really mindful of that as well when you are asking for external opinion, because you want to try your best to like also showcase how, if it's dealing with another person, where that person may be feeling, what they may be going through, because you want as an objective external opinion as possible. That's, for me, has been the most helpful, because it doesn't really make me have confirmation bias. Like most of the time, if I'm going to ask a girlfriend like what she thinks, she's always going to try to comfort me, side with me in whatever way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that they love, in this case, they love me so much that they just want me to come out as like best as possible. But that, once again, can kind of blind them from giving the most honest and objective viewpoint. So just wanted to add that as a tangent. So anyways, when she asked me what I thought, like quote unquote what she should do, I said, well, I definitely don't have an opinion on what you should do. But when it comes down to the question of should I end things or should I not, here's how I would evaluate it, whether this relationship is right for me. As most of you have probably heard for a while now, I've been consistently drinking Magic Mind because not only does it taste so good, especially if you love a hint of matcha flavor, but this stuff helps me get into my flow state, and I always feel a stronger sense of focus, which makes sense since it is a productivity drink. While I love coffee and I do make it every morning, when it comes to preparing for my workflow or wanting something to sip on before I get into my work, I always choose Magic Mind because, like I said, it helps me get into my flow state and it makes me feel more focused and productive. The best part is that it is all natural, and I'm going to share with you a few key facts and ingredients. Number one, it is known to increase and improve productivity. It has very little caffeine and it only comes from matcha tea. It's a great alternative for coffee if you drink coffee for energy and focus. For me, like I said, I drink it more for just the pleasure of making coffee. So this one is definitely a better alternative if you prefer more of an energy focused drink. It helps fight off fatigue and brain fog, as well as some ADD symptoms. And lastly, it is all natural ingredients, including adaptogens, matcha, and nootropics. If you've been considering it for a while, I highly, highly recommend you give this a try. I drink this every single day, no joke, and it comes in a box of 15, and I like it so much, sometimes I drink 2 in a day, but disclaimer, it is not recommended. They do recommend 1, but I just truly love it so much. And even better, you can enjoy 20% off your purchase with the code FULFILL at magicmind.co/fulfill during checkout. That's fulfill, FULFILL, at magicmind.co/fulfill. I would ask myself if the person that I'm with, if my partner, if he treats me the way I truly want to be treated. Does he make me feel loved? Has he been consistently loyal? Does he do his best to progress in his own life individually and with me in our relationship? Does he share the same values as me, and especially a similar personal vision? That's a big one. But most of all, I think it just comes back to, does this person treat me at the standard I expect to be treated from a partner? And the reason why I brought that up to her is because prior to me saying this, someone had said, you could do so much better, you could find someone hotter, you can find, all these different things. And don't get me wrong, I understand that messaging. And again, this is, a lot of us girls, we tend to want to hype each other up, and I don't blame any of it. However, you got to remember that finding someone hotter, someone better, that is all subjective, right? How do you measure that someone is better? How do you measure that someone is hotter? Because someone in our eyes might be beautiful and attractive, but to another person, they might seem average or maybe not as attractive, right? I can certainly say there are plenty of guys that I personally don't find attractive, but maybe to be honest, Kendall Jenner does. I can certainly say some of the people that she's dated or currently dated, whatever, I don't really find physically attractive, but that doesn't take away from their attractiveness. You know what I mean? So I think we have to be really careful about that when we are saying that to a friend or receiving that message from a friend, oh, you could find someone better. But what does better mean? Because better means nothing if they're not going to treat you at the standard that you deserve to be treated, if they're not going to love you the way you want and need to be loved. And that's why I asked her to really think deeply about, does this person currently do that? Because the other parts that has made her kind of question whether she should stay in this relationship, which is more about, I would say, just things that are, quite frankly, work throughable, I guess if that's a word, because it's just the shit that he's gotten himself into. And I said, we all make mistakes in life. We all, have our own personal adversities that can make us look questionable or make us look, like we aren't in the best spot. And that's fair. But you also got to remember that is overcomable. That's not permanent, right? What's more permanent is the person's character, the way they treat you. This also applies to whether a person is, making a good amount of money or not, right? So look, I'm surrounded by a lot of women all the time. I know it's a topic where, when it comes to the future of a guy, can he be a good mate or partner long term, when it's, when you're talking about family and combining incomes and whatever that looks like to you, right? You always ideally, men get a lot of their confidence from their work and or ability to make money. This literally goes back to tribes as well, way back in the day. A man is the hunter. He's able to get resources. That is just how it's translated into 2022, okay? But for me, I shared my personal example. I actually don't really look for someone that's already there, that can already do the resources. That is great. I actually look for someone that has the skill set to get those resources, if you will. This might be coming from a more entrepreneur mindset, because a lot of entrepreneur friends and I will talk about it. We could go to zero, but the question is, can we go back, right? Because entrepreneurs, Elon Musk is a great example, whether you love him or hate him. I read his biography and I highly recommend it. And I have to say, I was fascinated by his ability to take those risks with after exiting PayPal back in 2001 or some shit. He exited, had a lot of money, and you might not know this, but he spent almost majority of the money into SpaceX and all of the launches that he was doing. This is 2002, the 2000s era, okay? And you would think, take that money and go coast with your life. But no, I mean, most innovators and entrepreneurs, they need to continue to build something, to work on something. So they will take risks that, quite frankly, might bankrupt them. But that's why, to me, it doesn't matter necessarily where you are at now. I'm observing, do you have the skill set regardless? Because even if I did meet you at a point where you make a decent amount of money right now, right? The question is, what if you go to zero? Pandemic made a lot of businesses be put in a rough financial spot, right? So do you leave someone in that stage? Of course not. Ideally you don't, okay? So that's kind of coming back to your own morals and values, but that's why I'm saying those things are not permanent. Where a guy's financial standing is not permanent, where he's made certain mistakes that he might need to recover from, that's also not permanent, right? You got to just observe how they handle it. But also, again, when it comes to, is this an aligned partner for me? Observe how they make you feel, how they treat you. Is that consistent? Do they share the same core values? Because when you go back to the foundation, like a house, my friend Jordan and I were talking about this literally the other day. The foundation is the strongest, right? So part of the foundation is your shared values and your shared vision in life, individually, but also, again, shared. If you have similar visions, you will kind of glide a little bit easier. Whereas for me, for example, my vision would be being in New York long term, and also being able to explore different parts of Europe and expand my own personal brand and continue to provide value to women like you guys listening right now through this podcast. That to me is part of my personal vision. And obviously, if I wanted to date someone that's a camper and wants to, I don't know, go basically camping all over the world and living like a nomad and that kind of thing, that might be a hard match because we have different type of visions and lifestyles and things like that. And so again, I could date someone that's flexible and not having to stay in one place, but I don't know if it would make sense to be with someone that's trying to jump to a new place every month, just giving a random example.
Surgeons keep our hearts beating. They do the amazing, help save lives, and so can you. Your CSL plasma donation can help create 24 critical life-saving medicines that can give Grandpa the chance for his heart to swell when he meets his new grandson, or give a bride the chance for her heart to skip a beat on her wedding day. Every plasma donation helps more than you know. Do the amazing. Help save lives. Donate today at your local CSL Plasma Center and be rewarded for your generosity.
But then just jumping back really quick to things that are changeable, like someone's financial standing and someone recovering from difficult adversities or mistakes they've made in their own personal life. You might wonder, okay, how do I observe that though? Well, it really depends, right? So if you're starting to date someone, I think you can ask different questions, like just talking about the future in their terms, right? So maybe asking them around what are their goals around their career, what are they currently working on, finding out what they do in their free time. Because I would say, again, if someone's not in a good financial place, but they are talking about and doing, if you're dating them long enough where you can kind of see words and actions together, where they're working towards a specific goal or getting out of a financial rut, whatever that looks like, okay, that's evidence right there, right? But if they're not in a good financial place and they are kind of being reckless, where they tend to go out with their bros a lot and they continue to put themselves in debt, or there's just certain chapters where you should be spending your time more wisely to really build or get out of that rut that you are in. And that's, for me, what I would observe. But also, I just think the way someone talks about knowing how to get to A to B to Z, it takes practice, but I think that's something I can usually sense. Like, does this person know, like, if they're not in a great place, like, does this person know the vision of getting from A to Z? And I think that probably for me comes from my own entrepreneurial journey, because when I left my corporate job, left my salary, I also had to predict, like, okay, this is where I'm at on my monthly retainers that I have clients paying me. I need to get to this point. And so I can kind of, if someone were to ask me, how are you getting to that point? I'd be like, okay, I am currently prospecting X amount of people per month. And my goal is to have X more clients by this month that would bring me to X amount of dollars of revenue per month. You know what I mean? So I could at least break it down if someone really wanted to ask me. But it's kind of the same thing where if someone was trying to say, yeah, this is what I'm working on, I'm currently at a corporate job, but I'm trying to leave so I can build this, and they were kind of explaining in their own personal vision, yeah, this is what I'm doing so that I am feasible enough to leave, and then I will be at this financial point. Like, I can kind of hear that, when people have really thought about it and are serious enough to get towards it, you can just hear it in the way they explain. They're a little bit more vision oriented versus vague, and that doesn't mean when you're vision oriented you know every single detail, because I can't say that about myself, but you can hear the direction when they're speaking. So I would say, if you're really curious to know how you can kind of figure that out, just ask them, just be curious and just ask them different questions, but don't be like interrogating either. Like, the tone of voice matters, because if you ask a guy like, okay, you're in a kind of shitty financial place, like, what are you going to do to get out of it? That's just not pleasant. And also, at the end of the day, I had a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago too, but, at the end of the day, you should ideally love your partner where, like, the money doesn't matter, the ring doesn't matter, the external things don't matter. It's really like the connection between you and this person, and the way you make one another feel, on top of, again, the practicality of a relationship, which is like how you make it last long and how you treat one another and how you actually, build and support one another long term. Like, that's, again, to me, it's a given in a relationship. But I think at the end of the day, the external things are just the cherry on top. And I certainly am not at like my peak or at my best place. But at the same time, I wouldn't want a guy to want to date me just because I'm like already at a certain level, because I would be curious how his values are and where his decision making process is in that. So just wanted to share that, because I think that also applies to other areas of life that can be built upon. But remember that someone's intrinsic way of treating you, their values, their beliefs, and just who they are at their core, like their character, I would say that in itself is more permanent. And that's why the high value guys may feel harder to find, because you can't read about it on an app. You can't see it in a guy just by like meeting him in person for the first time. It's through getting to know someone and through their actions and their words and how they make you feel. Do you really get to observe that? And that goes with when you're with someone that's like not great either. You should also be able to kind of sense that. You're like, this just doesn't like feel like something that's aligned with me. And before I wrap up this bonus episode, I just want to say, as women, trust your instincts. Now, I will preface this, don't always believe that's completely right. But when you have a certain gut feeling, and this like goes for almost everything, right? Like, I could say that when it was about moving to LA, there was no logic to it. That was a gut feeling. Moving to New York, no logic. It was all gut feeling. Like, I didn't move to these places because of a job or because I needed to. It was just like instinctively it felt right. Same thing when I was trying on a sweater the other day. I was deciding what color I would want. The salesperson said, "Oh, I think that color looks great on you." But I intuitively just did not feel that. I was like, no, I just like my gut feels like this color works better. So I chose the color that I felt works better, right? At the end of the day, you know it, like what's best for you. Like, your body is aware. And I would say that also applies to people, and especially romantic partners. Like, when you meet someone on a first date, like some people will say yes, like things can build over time, and I agree to that. But also don't always just assume things can build just because the first date or the first time you guys met didn't have much of a like click, you know, like something just wasn't there. Don't always bet on the fact that it can build. Personally, I like in my relationship experience, in my past and current relationships, both of them were like very, when we met, it was just something was very in alignment. And for me, that happened when I was 18, and the second time was last year when I was 24. So, it's funny because I read somewhere how these actual connections, like these deep connections, arguably only happen with a romantic partner, like if you get lucky, at most 3 times. But I think that it's usually arguably like 2. But don't shoot the messenger, okay? That's just like data or whatever the fuck. Like I read somewhere or heard somewhere that it is rare for a reason. That's why when you feel it, and that's why I've always heard like people say like when it comes to why they knew or how they knew a certain partner was for them, it's just when you know, and that doesn't mean there are not hard times along the way. There are so many difficult paths along the way, but I think luckily today we have more access of learning how to navigate those difficulties better, that I think it can enable us to be more knowledgeable on not letting a connection go to waste and allowing us to work through them when we still feel like that is necessary versus just walking away because we think the grass is greener on the other side. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode and maybe gave you some food for thought. Maybe this was something you needed to hear. As always, it means a lot when you message me on Instagram and just let me know your feedback, your thoughts on this show, because it really does keep me going, and it's just so nice to hear you guys supporting the show. So thank you again. It means the world, and I appreciate you all so much. I will chat with you all in the next episode.
Surgeons keep our hearts beating. They do the amazing, help save lives, and so can you. Your CSL plasma donation can help create 24 critical life-saving medicines that can give Grandpa the chance for his heart to swell when he meets his new grandson, or give a bride the chance for her heart to skip a beat on her wedding day. Every plasma donation helps more than you know. Do the amazing. Help save lives. Donate today at your local CSL Plasma Center and be rewarded for your generosity.